By the way, I should mention right here, this is not entirely safe at all, period. Just by way of fair warning, this is deep, strange stuff.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. And here today I wanted to talk about something that's a pretty important topic, and it's a disclaimer for contact work, right? And people might be a little bit surprised seeing this from me, as I'm somebody who often talks about contact work, but being very experienced in it and having done it for so long and been involved in the field for as long as I have, I've seen a lot go down, so to speak. Here I also wanted to show this clip from Daniel Ingram. He's more talking about fire kasina practice, which is a type of meditation and concentration practice. But what he discusses correlates with contact work. If you replace what he's talking about and replace fire kasina with contact work, in my opinion, there's going to be important correlations, and actually even in a greater context, truth-seeking and spiritual waking, and even what we would call and consider classical enlightenment. So here, just to preface this, let me play this Daniel Ingram clip for you.
By the way, I should mention right here, this is not entirely safe at all, period. Just by way of fair warning, this is deep, strange stuff. And we should probably talk about that at some point. But read all the warnings in the Fire Casino site, listen to the things we talk about. But this can get super weird, and people can get super bizarre and unstable. So the best, and I should have said this earlier in case people have already tuned off and got the first part, but not the second part, that like a highly concentrated mind is basically like an acetylene torch. An acetylene torch directed properly can cut through steel and do amazing things. An acetylene torch directed improperly could cut off your arm just as easily. And so just be careful with a highly concentrated mind. I mean, I don't recommend this to everybody at all, like particularly in the doses we're doing. You got to have your psychology trip vary together, I think, to have a good chance of this going well. But it's like mountain climbing. Even the best mountain climbers have accidents. Nobody says mountain climbing is entirely safe, even for the best. And this is that. This is high adventure meditation. Proceed with caution, have friends. Like when I did a solo fire casino retreat, I had two friends, on call. That was 2017, something like that, at the beach. And it was a 17-day retreat. And I had two friends on call who knew this territory and who knew me, that were there in case I needed a spotter, in case I felt like I was starting to get out of specs and needed someone to ground down with. And I've done this a lot, and I think of myself as a sane practitioner. But even it's like you want to have safety ropes when you're climbing, even if you're a super good climber and know the cliff face well. So yeah. So
and you're already hinting there at some of the possible dangers, which we'll come to a little bit later, of these sorts of practices.
Not hinting, explaining in some ways, right?
Right, exactly.
So if hearing voices and or seeing things that other people don't see as being there, although there are ways to do this collectively. There are times when people collectively have, group experiences. That's a whole nother topic, which then becomes even more mind-bending and paradigm bending. But yeah, if you're not the kind of person who could handle hearing a voice well or seeing some strange thing, don't do this, because that's the territory. And even who think that they are and will be, that doesn't mean you necessarily will be. And there might be things you could see or hear that you could handle, and maybe things you could see or hear that suddenly you can't, or can't handle skillfully. And so that's why it's good to have friends around, good to have your morality trip together, good to have a healthy dose of skepticism. So I can describe these experiences, but becoming fascinated with these experiences, particularly hearing voices, particularly commands and messages and stuff like that. I know a lot of people who have gone badly wrong down all kinds of rabbit holes buying the content, right? Luckily, for whatever strange reason, when I get this content, it's almost always like incomprehensible or meaningless. There are a few exceptions.
And I'm also going to include the clip to that, the full interview for more context and people interested in that in the description for you. But again, if you're not familiar with Daniel Ingram's work, I highly recommend you check it out, especially if you're interested in meditation and awakening and classical enlightenment, so to speak, whether it's a Buddhist or different context. But here, regarding contact work, in my opinion, in my experience, I don't find contact to be inherently dangerous, right? That's been my experience, and I've communicated with tens of thousands of people over the last 13, 14 years or so regarding this on a daily basis, and the vast majority of people going out and doing contact work, or what we can call CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, or HICE, Human-Initiated Contact Events, the vast majority of people have what we can consider positive experiences, right? But even with such positive experiences come, that's, the post effect, right? Or the after effects of having such positive experiences can still be disruptive to your life. And I'm not trying to stop anybody from doing contact work at all, right? I'm a proponent of it to some degree. If the individual is ready, I think it's an individual choice. Generally, if you're kind of thinking, I don't know if I should do it, maybe you probably shouldn't, right? Maybe if you're opening yourself up to things that we're not sure of or aware of, if that's your instinct, go with it, right? But if you're somebody who has a calling for it, you're going to do it no matter what, you just have to do it, that kind of, being compelled in that way, a calling to do the work, then by all means go for it. I can't stop you, right? And that's my general personality anyways. Contact work is not for everyone. I personally just have an inclination to do it because I had contact experiences before and I wanted answers. I was already having interactions, so this is my way of pursuing that, right? Whether people want to consider that a guidance, a manipulation, that's a perspective. I don't have the final answer on that, although I have my experiences to kind of go by. So, that being said, contact work, generally speaking, the great vast majority of people involved in the work, out of just say like 1,000 people that do contact work, you go out with a positive intention for peaceful contact with UFOs, non-human intelligence, UFO intelligence, however you want to categorize it. I'm being really honest with this. Like out of like 1,000 people, you might hear like 3 or 4 people that said they had a negative experience. There'll also be people who said I had no experience, right? So put that on the table. It depends on how diligently you're pursuing it, how much effort you put into it, and there are other unknown variables that we can't account for, right? We're dealing with another intelligence. Ultimately, the UFO intelligence is going to decide if it's going to respond, when it's going to respond, and how it's going to respond. But I do believe there is an interactive component in which the contact work is on our end, what we can do to prepare for contact, to create the right conditions for contact to occur in whatever way it's going to. Okay, but again, getting into this disclaimer part, even if you have a super positive experience, let's say you go out, you do contact work, whether it's the first day or within the first month, you have an insanely incredible experience. And, that experience is likely going to have a lasting impact on you. And you might think that's great. And it might be. And in my case, it was, right? For better or worse. But, that could, if you have a partner or if you're married or, that could affect your relationship. If you're all of a sudden, seriously pursuing this and this wasn't part of the equation before in your relationship, that could cause a rift in your relationship. And I've seen this happen, with one of my good friends. I don't know if he would like me to mention him here, but you know who you are. Had a very powerful CE5 experience, even in broad daylight, and it altered his pursuit of UFOs and the phenomenon. I don't want to say it was wholly that, but it likely, partly contributed to troubles with his relationship. And this I've seen actually, it's not just one person. I actually have a number of friends where this happened to. Other people, and let me say this can also go for spiritual awakening. This is not just contact and contact work. If you're pursuing awakening and enlightenment, these same things can occur. Although I'm not trying to equate contact work with enlightenment, truth seeking in its many forms can have these kind of drastic effects on your life, and we have to put that into perspective. And again, I feel as somebody who just is gonna go and do it. That's just my personality. So for that, what that's worth. So there's other things too. Your job, right? Like you might just decide this work is so important that you want to spend all your time doing it, and you're going to quit your job. I would not recommend that to anybody, and most people aren't that extreme. But again, it can start to take up a lot of your free time, and you really have to prioritize your life and get your life in order and make sure you're not overly obsessed with the issue. And again, maybe you will be a major contributor to the field and to contact work and do some amazing stuff that I can't account for the sacrifices you made. I'm thinking out loud here and on my observations and experience in the field. And on another note, maybe there are a small number of circumstances, right, where you do contact work and for some reason that opens you up to not so great experiences, maybe that are not even directly correlated with the UFO phenomenon. Say you do this meditation, you do contact work, and now you're on this kind of journey, and you're having these profound or incredible interactions and experiences, and because of that, now you have poltergeist activity, or what people call a hitchhiker, or something like that is now occurs in your life, and now you can't even it's hard to even separate that from the contact work. Is this the same intelligence? Is this a different intelligence? Is it even possible to differentiate? My own feeling on that, and I can't say definitively, is that yes, you can, and there's definitely different qualities to interactions where, as far as I can tell, you can tell that it's a different intelligence or kind of phenomena that you're interacting with. That's my own personal experience. Could it be some vast, grand intelligence that's just really controlling all of it in like a super meta system? Sure. But if that's the case, there's nothing you can do about it anyways. But again, so these are just things to consider. Contact work can affect your life. And, it's just something that I guess people should consider. The reason I'm making this video is because, people see me out there talking about contact and contact work a lot. And I'm not necessarily promoting it per se. I'm speaking to people who are out there already doing the work, who are in the field. So some of my colleagues, or people that are looking into it and they want to do it, It's better, I think, that they have somebody that's experienced and informed that could shed some light on some of the issues or share some perspective, rather than have nothing at all, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing here. Contact work might not be for everybody. Neither is maybe awakening or enlightenment, right? I think anybody can benefit from a tiny bit of meditation, from stress reduction, to being able to detach a little bit, and those kind of things. Should the majority of people do 3 to 8 hours of meditation a day? Probably not. I mean, they're going to reach a point where you pass the point of no return, and although I see that usually as a positive transformation, it could really mess your life up in some ways. And I'm just trying to be honest and transparent here. But at the same time, you could have this kind of stuff in your life, contact work or meditation, awakening, and it can go off without a hitch, right? And it just enhances your life, your perspective, and there are never any negative drawbacks from it, right? But with that being so, can the opposite happen? Yeah, it's a possibility. Let's not be ignorant, and let's not deny what could be possible. And it's all on an individual basis. There's so many variables to it that there's no one answer. So again, I just wanted to share perspective on this and touch on some points I think are important. Again, contact work in my experience has been a good thing in my life. I couldn't imagine it any other way. I wouldn't have done it any other way if I had the choice. But these are all different things that we should be aware of. So again, this is just kind of like a little rant on contact work and a disclaimer. It's not for everybody. Is again, just like anything else, not because it's inherently dangerous. And again, the dangerous aspect, myself and Exo Academian have talked a bit about it here and there of what a term he's used called spiritual hygiene. And if you're doing this kind of work, even meditation and remote viewing, the shadow side stuff comes up. You're tapping into deeper levels of awareness. Things are going to bubble up that you didn't know were there. So, you could even be doing a meditation for contact work, and all of a sudden you have to work through a past trauma because you're doing a meditation or something, right? So and that's not even UFO related necessarily, but this can still come up. And the spiritual hygiene part is kind of like having your ducks in a row, and that's why systems like Buddhist meditation and yoga have built-in systems like the Eightfold Path and the 8 limbs of yoga that are there for supports for your meditative and contemplative and awakening journey. Contact work doesn't necessarily have that within itself. There's no contact work system that is comprehensive to that level, because these old comprehensive contemplative systems are thousands of years old, and they've have a very stronger foundation in that regard compared to I'm going to go out and do contact work and hopefully initiate a contact with non-human intelligence or UFO intelligence, and which I think all of it's important. So again, if you are considering contact work, it's having supports built into your process, such as, and I'm not promoting any religion, but they're very good examples. Having good support systems in, like the Eightfold Path or the 8 limbs of yoga, could be super helpful, because those are there to support your journey and keep you on track and keep you, clear in that regard. So the spiritual hygiene aspect is that kind of, the intention that you're bringing to the work, baggage that you have, some that you're aware of, some that you don't know, past traumas, and there's something to say about the quality of your intention and awareness, even on a subconscious level, that you're the type of person that's generally going to attract something or another, which could be very positive or could be looked at in a negative way, even though I'm somewhat coming from a non-dualistic approach here. On a consensus level, you don't want to have a negative experience necessarily, even though it could be overall in the time positive and transformational for you. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where it's unpleasant if you can help it, right? So that's kind of what I'm speaking to with that. And again, contact work or awakening work or truth seeking is not for everybody. Just like powerlifting's not for everybody. Playing piano is not for everybody. It's not for me. I couldn't play piano for heck. You know what I mean? So my really indicator of if you should do it or not, if you're really wondering about it, is if you're going to do it no matter what, right? And that's how I was. I've seen people who were on the fence with it for a while, and that they eventually felt they were ready to take it up, and they did, and it was a very positive thing in their life, and they had powerful experiences that I think benefited them. But again, that's kind of my indicator. If you know you're going to do it and just do it no matter what, go for it, right? If you have reservations about it and you're concerned, you don't want to open yourself up to something, or if that's the point of view where you're coming from, maybe you shouldn't do it then, right? And that's kind of like what you put out is what is going to reflect back at you. And that's not to say somebody's going to go out with positive intentions. That means it's impossible for them to have some kind of negative aspect come about in one way or another, whether during the contact or afterwards. I can't say that definitively, but the great majority of the time, like 9 out of 10, when you go out with a positive intention, you're coming from a place of meaningfulness, of transparency, honesty, and maybe like a feeling of calling to do the contact work. Generally speaking, that's really a powerful angle to come from, and you're going to have more of a greater experience in that way. Again, that's my experience. That's what I've observed over all these years, speaking to thousands of different people who have gone out and done the work, whether there were experiences prior to that or they just took up contact work and began from there. So again, this is just my rant. That is a disclaimer on contact work and just perspectives and insights regarding contact work in general around these kind of themes. So I hope this was helpful for people. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you appreciated it. And I'll be making more kind of like contact work videos in the future sometime soon. So stay tuned. Take care, guys.